Hey everyone, it's Sam, and welcome back to the 911 Nonsense podcast. To stay in the loop, learn about upcoming guests, and join in the conversations with the Noon community, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hey, if you like what you hear in this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to us. On this episode of NOON Carson, a flight nurse, combat medic, and host of the Critical Care Crossroads, shares his journey from lifeguard to ICU nurse and flight medicine. He opens up about the challenges of balancing military service with civilian life, reflections from his COVID-19 pandemic, and the responsibility of caring for patients in critical moments. Let's get started. Hey guys, are you looking for a top-notch first aid kit? Look no further than Jump Medic. Owned by a seasoned paramedic with over a decade of EMS experience, their kits are user-friendly and packed with essential supplies. From the most popular Pro Gen 2 to the compact hardshell kit, they've got you covered. You can even customize your own kit with the Build-A-Bag option. Enter the code NOON10, N-O-O-N, the number 10, and enjoy 10% off your order. Free U.S. shipping, and everything is HSA FSA approved. Visit jumpmedic.com and follow at JumpMedicUSA on Instagram. Stay prepared with Jump Medic. All right, Carson, thank you so much for joining the Noon podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like you and I have been pen pals on Instagram for several months by now, and it's so great to actually hear your voice and talk to you almost in person.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. I love the idea of pen pals. Man, remember when we had to do that in elementary school?
Is that something you guys did?
Oh, I'm so old. Yes. Yeah, we did. We had to if I remember correctly, they would pull nursing homes and we would write letters to the older people in the nursing homes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just to
That's
help,
cool.
Stave off the loneliness.
That's really cool.
It sounds ridiculous now that I talk about it, but pen pals were like a big thing, or you would get other kids from other countries too. Yeah.
I think I remember that being a thing. I just don't think my school did it.
Yeah, that's okay. You're young too. They might have stopped it. I mean, social media too. Why do you even need pen pals when you have social media? Because you can talk to somebody across the world instantly instead of 3 months from now, you know?
Yeah, look at us now.
I know. Look at us now. Carson, I appreciate it so much. Can I go ahead and get an intro of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Carson. I'm currently a flight nurse out of the Midwest. I've got this weird long backstory that I'm sure will unravel over the next hour or so of conversation. But the backstory being, growing up, my father was my principal, and he's a great man. So don't take this the wrong way. But when you kind of live in that shadow the whole time, it's hard to make close friendships. And wasn't the best at sports, and I wasn't the best at grades and all that stuff either. I wasn't bad at any of those things, but I didn't have the standout thing that was my thing. And then I was a dumb 16-year-old kid that wanted a car. So in order to get the car, I needed a job, and I found a job as a lifeguard. It just kind of stuck to that. And that was the one time that I actually felt like I was my own person, making my friends. And as time went on, it was time for me to make a college decision. I just kind of stuck with that. And before you know it, ER nursing, ICU nursing, a little bit of combat medicine on the side, and the National Guard is my side gig. And here we are as a flight nurse, I guess. It's been a wild ride.
It sounds like a wild ride. I really find it crazy how many EMTs and nurses started out as lifeguards in high school. That's such a crazy thing. And maybe it's because I live in the desert and we don't have a lot of pools or areas of recreational water where we would require lifeguards. But I do feel like that has been one of the side things. So were you ever scared to become a lifeguard? Because that's a huge responsibility, but at the age of 16, you might not recognize how big of a responsibility that is.
I was terrified because I didn't even know if I could swim when they hired me. I'm not joking.
Oh my gosh.
I applied to be the guy that mows the lawn, and the guy interviewing me was the lifeguard manager. He's like, "We need numbers, bro. We're gonna throw you in." And so in training, you start at the shallow end and you swim over towards where it gets deeper and deeper. And next thing I know, the water's over my head, but I'm still above it. Okay, I guess I can make this work. And I actually was good at it. Crazy.
That's so funny. And you had talked about being in high school that you had a condition called idiopathic hypotonia. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was more so when I was little and when I was born. I had kind of a traumatic birth. There was some nuchal cord going on, and it came out pretty blue. I don't know what my APGAR was because I didn't know what an APGAR was back then, but it
You're
wasn't
such a
great.
nerd.
Thank you. It wasn't great, and so what the main impact of all that was that my physical development was a little stunted and a little slowed, and it wasn't anything on the surface you could tell. But what it boiled down to is like when I would play tag with my friends in middle school, they'd be running backwards. I still couldn't catch up to them. And like when I was on the little football team, I'd do really bad, and everyone, we'd be running the big lap around the field, and they'd all be done. I wouldn't even be halfway done with my little lap. And so it's just one of those things that I had to do some physical therapy, rehabbing out of it. When I was real little, my parents weren't sure if I'd ever be able to walk, and turns out it wasn't quite that bad, but it was enough to kind of stunt my self perception in the way that like who thought I'd be capable of being a lifeguard or being in the army or things like that. So my whole career has been proving to myself that oh, that original story about me really isn't that true.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna go with next. So, like, how do you go from something like that to now I'm gonna join the military and be really good at my career?
I it's really just one step at a time. I think it's the Navy SEALs have a term that's like, how do you eat an elephant? You know, it's one bite at a time. You can't eat it all in one day, and so you do these little things like getting that lifeguard job, for example. It's a very physical. You know, you have to have some sort of physical standard in order to be a lifeguard. And you know, once you conquer that, it's like, all right, well, that wasn't horrible. What's the next thing? And then we might talk about it later on. Became a volunteer firefighter. And it's like, oh, I was actually able to knock down a door and go inside of a burning building and pull someone out of it. Like, all right, sweet. What's the next thing? And you kind of build from there, and you realize like you're actually capable of so much more than you were originally told. And I think that's true for just about anybody on some sort of level of adversity.
Yeah, no, that definitely is true, and I think we see it a lot in even today's standards, right? Like a lot of us are told that we're not going to be good at what we do. And I think that that is such a mean thing to do. Whether it's intentional or not, you shouldn't be telling somebody that they don't deserve to be there. You should at least give them the opportunity to prove themselves, right? Not only to prove to themselves, but then to prove to you that they do belong to be where they are. What did you end up doing in the military?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to join when I was halfway through nursing school. The problem is the time that I joined, or the time that I graduated high school, things were really hot in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I was afraid I was going to just go deploy and then not finish a degree. So I prioritized getting a degree first. Right up, finished with nursing school, went to a recruiter's office, and was lined up with the National Guard and got a job as a combat medic. So really just two careers that complement each other. And so in the National Guard, they have what's called RSP, a Recruit Sustainment Program. And what that means is you can drill with your recruiters who prep you for basic training, but you don't have to ship out you have like a year to ship out, right? And so I pushed out as far as I could, got some nursing experience, and my contract started right whenever I signed the dotted line, but went off to basic about a year later after I had some nursing experience under my belt.
That's super cool. What prompted you to go to nursing, right? Because I think you said you don't have any family or anybody that's medically related.
Yeah, so my mom has nine siblings and my dad has five, and they've all so there are people in my family that have done the whole medical thing, but there weren't a whole lot either medical or military that were in my immediate circle of my life. There was just nobody that was doing that, and like I talked about, having my father as a principal, and then later on becoming the superintendent in a small town. Everyone just kind of thinks it's what you're going to do, and I remember growing up, he could never turn it off, and he still can't to this day. Like, it's a job that's 24/7, 365. And I kind of wanted a career that was a little bit different than that, have some self identity, but also one where I know that there are times where I will be at work and there are times where I won't be. And that seems really cool. And so you compound that with the self identity I found in lifeguarding, and I've just been kind of improvising ever since. And this is where we ended up.
That's awesome. And you said that you did all of this to prove to yourself that you could. So how do you feel about it now?
I think I was dumb to have ever thought that I couldn't, but the reality is that, and I think this is true for everybody. We all learn from failures, and there's not a whole lot that I succeeded on in the first try. And I don't usually tell people this because the whole stigma with it, but there are classes I had to retake. There are physical tests I didn't pass the first time. I had to go ahead and retry and work harder the second time. To be a flight nurse, you have to have a board exam. I have attempted board exams 4 times and passed one. And every single time it was learning from those things, those times we were told no, the times the professors told you that you weren't going to be cut out for this. understanding where the weakness is and really targeting that weakness until you come out on the other side. And despite all those failures, I became a flight nurse at the age of 26 years old, which like in the grand scheme of things is still pretty young for it. So it's not like it pushed back my timeline super far either. It just was one of those where you have to have some good self-assessment and realize these are my weaknesses, but I can overcome them.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I'm super proud of where you are right now compared to how you were and who you were in 16. That's at 16. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You said you became a flight nurse at 26. Do you feel like at this point, because I believe you're 29, is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Do you feel like at this point you're sitting at the top of your career?
In terms of scope and licensure, maybe. I don't have like I think a lot of people on the nursing route always have CRNA or NP in the back of their mind. It's like, no, I really want to do this and I want to hone in on this. But when it comes to the line of thinking that I'm at my full potential, absolutely not. It feels like I started flight nursing yesterday, you know? And so
Awesome.
I hope that over the course of the next 20, 30 years, however much more gas I still have in the tank, I continue to learn and just do better and better.
That's amazing. And where did you start out when you became a nurse? Where were you hanging out at?
Yeah, so I worked 4 jobs while I was in nursing school, and so it's all kind of blends into that. I was lifeguarding at 3 different facilities. I was volunteering almost full-time hours at the fire department, and I was also an ICU tech at one of the hospitals in my hometown. My hometown having 2 major level 1s, and I was in the ICU. It was a great job, but the hospital down the street was paying more money, and they offered me an ER slot. So I did ER for almost a year, and I started nursing. Graduate and then you have to wait a little while to take your boards and wait a little while before you can actually start. And I started in the very convenient month of March of 2020 in the ER at a level
Oh,
one.
that is very convenient.
Yeah. And so I did ER for probably 9 months, almost a year. And they accidentally, no one predicted COVID would have happened the way it did. And they decided they were way overnumbered in terms of nurses in the ER, which neither here nor there. But they were super understaffed in the ICUs and like the ICU and the CVICU comparatively. So they said, we're going to start forcing people to move or you can volunteer. And so I rose my hand and moved to the CVICU and did CVICU for most of my time on the floor.
TVICU is a good place to be. That can be quite complicated and requires a lot of learning. So props to you. That's like one of the harder ones, I think. In my opinion, in my experience here, that's one of the harder departments to get into as a baby nurse.
Yeah, and it's COVID kind of opened the floodgates for whoever could get in there. But I remember by the time I was pretty deep into the ER nursing, I knew flight was something I wanted to do, and I didn't really appreciate that ICU nursing would set me up very well for that. And so I was kind of bummed I had to move to the CVICU, but at the same time, took the hit for my people. And the first day they were transferring out a patient out of this big level 1 that had all kinds of drips and ECMO going on, and this flight team came up and managed it like no one else's business. And I remember thinking like, okay, yeah, if I want to know to fly, I need to be exposed to these skills over here. So it actually worked out very well. I moved up there.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you had that experience and you got to see like that was actually a necessary skill because a lot of the questions that as flight providers we get is what experience do I need? And I tell everybody, if you're a nurse, you should get some ER experience, but you should also get some ICU experience because I think that sets you up for kind of the best of both worlds, right? If you have no EMS experience at all. And then if you're an EMT, I tell everybody at least work in the field, but also go work in a hospital so that you can see kind of that side of it. It's completely different when you're working as a flight provider compared to an EMT, right? Like there are some ground critical care, which does do pretty similar to what we do, just without the flight physiology aspect. But that's really cool that you got to get that experience and that you also recognized it at that time as like, okay, I do kind of need to take this seriously. You actually charged, right, for CBICU, is that correct?
Yeah, I actually have a really funny story about how that happened if you got the time for it.
Yeah, we have all the time for you, Carson.
Well, thank you. No, so during COVID, everything's on its end, and they're making toddlers and these babies charge nurses. And so I'd already told the shadow as a charge nurse before this happened, but I hadn't been turned loose yet as a charge nurse. And we had this patient that was super sick, like heart not working, too sick to intubate on probably 10 plus infusions. And for the entire night shift for 10 straight hours, I'm just spiking bags left and right, spiking bags left and right, doing everything I can with the physician and with my charge nurse at the time to keep this patient alive. And is dripping sweat. The charge nurse is following me around, just picking up trash. I only have time to pick trash up off the ground. This patient is so sick. And we go to fly him out for a heart transplant. The flight team comes, jaw on the floor, right? Then like, you guys are the flight team, you should, help me, please. So we send them over to the helipad, and we get word the patient's coding on the helipad, reset the rooms because they're going to come straight back to us to restabilize and try again. And in that amount of time, we heard they brought the patient to the ER, and the patient, they called it, and my charge nurse, who was very pregnant at the time, looked at me and goes, "So, how do you feel about being a charge nurse? Do you think you'd be capable of it?" And I said, "It's going to be messy, but I've shadowed and I understand the system." And she goes, "Okay, cool, because I'm in labor and I'm going to go have this baby now at labor and delivery." I was like, "What?" And so then after that, I was a charge nurse for her whole maternity leave and just thrown right in.
That's awesome. That's so funny. That's cool that she felt that you were a good candidate for that position because I imagine there were several other people.
No, no, there was just nobody
Oh,
else. And she didn't even have a baby. I mean, I don't think I was incompetent by any means, but I didn't have a frontal lobe that was fully developed at the time. I was that young.
well, that age is debatable, right? Like at what age
Yeah.
does the frontal lobe finish developing? I've seen some 35-year-olds who probably still need a little more developing time.
I'm gonna say I'm 29. I wonder if mine's developed all the way still. I hope
Yeah,
it's
that's
not.
okay. I mean, I'm not gonna say how old I am. Mine is still not.
Fair enough.
So in your time in the hospital, are you still working in the hospital? I should ask.
No, I am full time flight, and that's kind of all I do. My flight team that I'm on right now is university affiliated, so we'll do hospital shadowing time from time to time, but not in a full time capacity by any means.
Okay. And then also military, right?
Yes, Army National Guard. So they say 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year, but let's be honest, it's a little bit more than that sometimes.
Sure, for sure. I really like the university-based programs because you get that opportunity to go and work in the hospital where like
Yes.
a lot of people don't get that. So I really appreciate those systems for that reason. That's super cool. So in your time working in the hospital, what's one of your more memorable memories while being in the hospital?
The big thing is the people around you. If we just did this for ourselves, and like, there's something to be said about doing it for our patients. We do serve people in a very high capacity, but it would be nothing without the friends I made along the way. And there are all these little micro stories, but I don't look back on specific stories. I look back on people and the people that I had that time with, and that's what means a lot to me.
Sure, yeah, no, the teams can make or break your time, which kind of cracks me up with travel nurses, right? Because you get travel nurses that change teams every like 3 to 6 months, but then you get the ones that will stay for like 2 or 3 years and really get to know those teams. I don't know if I could do it as a travel nurse. I get too attached, I think, and I would struggle going somewhere for 3 months and then changing and having to do that process all over again. Some people
Mm-hmm.
do really well at it. I don't think that I would.
Yeah, it's definitely personality dependent, and I think travel nursing has really changed things along the way. My original ICU crew, my original CV ICU crew, is the one that I bonded with the most, and all of us were in our early to mid 20s. All of us didn't even have enough experience to be traveling yet, and we were just kind of in it together. And there was really no adult, we just had to figure it out, and just us being kids in that environment, walking in expecting 3 to 5 deaths a day, a few codes a day, in that type of high volume system, it really bonded us in a way that, like, there's no other way I can cultivate that. Maybe it's trauma bonding, who knows.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't speak very much of medical shows because I don't really like watching medical shows. But earlier on in my career, when Grey's Anatomy first came out, I think they really touched on something that is important, I think, for people that are coming into the medical industry to understand. And I don't know if you ever watched it or not, but one of the episodes is one of the baby doctors is on the code team. And he talks about all he was so excited to be on the code team because he was like, yeah, I actually get to go save lives. This is going to be the coolest thing I get to go do. And you see him throughout the episode coming back looking more and more defeated because when people code, we don't always save them, right? It's like a very
Mm-hmm.
slim chance that we do actually save them. So I thought that touched on that concept really well. And I think that's a good leading for people, like I said, coming into the industry where you're a student, whether you're an EMT student or a nursing student, they push so hard where, like, if you're not doing this correct, you're not going to save that person, but that's not accurate. Like, there's a good chance you're not going to save this person anyways. There are very few things that we do that actually save lives. Being somewhere in the right place at the right moment is one of the big things. Recognizing that somebody needs like a defibrillator is also a big thing. But even then, it's not necessarily, it doesn't mean that you're going to get ROSC, you're not going to get return of spontaneous circulation.
Right. And I think too that we're seeing the metric change. And I'm old enough now where when I was, really at the heart of being a charge nurse there, which also means being on the code team, your metric was not neurological survivability and it wasn't good outcomes walking out of the hospital. It was, did we get ROSC? And yeah, we got ROSC in this
Yes.
patient 9 times in 4 hours. And that's awesome because we got ROSC 9 times. And we all know like it's futile. This is not what's good for the patient. They're just suffering. Right. But it's good seeing that paradigm change, but also just being in the thick of it. That was wild.
Yeah, no, it is wild. It is wild for sure. Is being a flight nurse everything you wanted it to be? Is it all the glory?
I tell people it's so different from what I expected, but not in a bad way. Like it's a very very good job. I love doing it. I don't think I ever want to change in doing it, but it also from the outside looking in looked completely different. I don't really know how to describe it. You kind of have to just be in it to understand.
Try your best.
Yeah, I'll try my best. So I do think being in the ICU, especially in that environment, in that era that I was in, there was no pressure on the outcome, right? We're going to try our best, but if this patient, if this patient has a poor outcome, as long as we try our best, everything's going to be okay. In the flight world, there's a much stronger QI process and there's a much stronger education. And it's great because there's more training and you know what you're doing, but you almost know so much of what you're doing now and so much of the pathophysiology that it's scary because you know exactly how you're affecting this patient and you know that anything that could go wrong is going to fall completely on you. It's completely your responsibility now, and that's a huge, heavy responsibility to carry, and you have to be ready for it. And it's not like you can specialize. It's not like it's just you're only taking cardiac patients or neuro patients or whatever your specialty is. Like you take everything, so you have to be on your game for every single type of patient.
Yeah, I really like how you worded like you know everything now, so you know exactly how you're affecting this patient, which can change things dramatically, right? Like as a paramedic, you can kind of play dumb if you don't understand the pathophysiology, which me and Austin Kaiser talked about this, right? Like you're killing people and you don't even realize that you're killing people because you don't understand the pathophysiology of either the medication that you're giving or the treatment that you're providing, right? So
And there's
it does become a very scary thing when you become this critical care provider because you do understand what you're doing and what the next steps are and what if something changes what you have to do next. And then you're kind of progressing down that line where like, okay, this is getting to a point where like there's literally nothing I can do in this tiny little box on this mobile like aircraft, right? There's only so
mm-hmm.
much you can do. I don't know how you fly rotor, man, because those are very long transports in a very tiny box that doesn't always have air conditioning.
Yeah, this is not the time of year for it to be the most fun environment in the world with respect to that. But you also made a good point too, just with the expanded QI is every decision you make is going to be questioned, like whether it be by the peer review process or by your educator or by your medical director. And everything you do is there's no longer an excuse of, well, I didn't know and I thought this might work. It's a you have to be very intentional about every action that you take. And you also can't let that paralyze you. You have to take an action. So you get caught in this catch 22 of when you've gone down every route you can possibly think of. It's I have to make a decision and it has to be a well educated decision, but I can't run out of cards here.
Yeah, no, for sure. While you're there, are you ever concerned about crashes or anything else happening?
I think, especially given how the last couple of years have gone since I've joined, it's always a reality. And the safety culture in my program, luckily, is very, very hard on, we take drift very seriously. We take complacency very seriously. And always do our walkarounds, always do your safety checklists. But the reality is you can't always escape that reality. It's always going to be there lurking in the back of your mind that could happen.
Right. There, you never know, right? You never know. You could have the best safety culture, you could have the best maintenance program in the world, and still not be able to predict why a crash has happened. So recently, as most of people have, well, and most people in the flight industry, right? Like in the US, there are less than 10,000 flight providers. That was as of like a year or so ago that those statistics may have changed. So anytime there's a medical flight, we most likely hear about it. And just recently, my old stomping grounds where I worked, they actually just had a fatal crash. And It was two pilots, the flight medic and the flight nurse, and none of them survived. We don't know the reason yet. We're still waiting for the results to come back. As most people know, that takes about a month. But that hit really close to home, right? And I think that we're going to see a shift in flight providers here in the state, which is sad. And maybe this is something that happens often in other cities where this has happened. I've not had a crash this close to home in this capacity in a very long time. So this is something that is affecting me, and to this is gonna get a little rough. I'm sorry, guys. To the people that reached out to me to ask if I was okay because they know where they knew where I was flying. Thank you. It is very sweet to be thought of in that capacity because I know I've been on the other end where I'm messaging my friends like, "Are you okay? I just heard that there was a crash. Are you okay?" And being on the other end of that was a little bit bittersweet, right? Because it wasn't me, but I didn't know who it was at the time, and that made it very hard. And they just announced the names last week, and it was the pilots Jeffrey Tuning, Amanda Benson, Camelia Chavez, and Nick Mancuso. And for the people that knew those providers and those pilots, they knew that they were some of the best. I've known Camelia and Nick for going on 20 years. And if Camelia came walking in the room, you know it was going to be a good time. You were going to be laughing the entire shift. She was such a good nurse and such a good provider, and she was so excited to be in the flight world. She was so excited. It was something that she pushed for a little while. And I'm glad that she got to experience that going into the field and getting to do the things that she wanted to do. Nick was one of the smartest paramedics I've ever met in my whole life. He just pulled out some of the most random facts, and you couldn't question him because if you questioned him and you Googled it, you knew he was right. He was just that kind of a dude. He was so good. And I was lucky enough to give Nick a hug, the week before he passed, and I was lucky enough to talk with Camelia 2 weeks before she passed as well. So just know that if this is something that has affected you, or even not this case, but any other, crashes or incidences where somebody's passed in a work-related capacity, you can reach out to anybody. We are all available, and we're ready to talk anytime you are. I'm going to throw out a song suggestion. I'm sorry, Carson, to be throwing
Don't be
this on
sorry.
you. I'm going to throw out a song suggestion that I've been listening to kind of all week. And it kind of, I don't know, it's just someone that has plucked at my heartstrings, and I've been listening to it because when I listen to songs, I have to listen to them over and over and over again until I can get it out of my head. And it's called Fine by Kyle Hume. And the chorus goes, "Yeah, I'm fine. If F is for feeling overwhelmed and I is for I'm not all right, yeah, I'm fine. If N is for not being able to sleep and E is for every night, yeah, I'm fine. Finally feeling the pressure of keeping my feelings inside, yeah, I'm fine. Well, maybe not. And I just need to tell somebody I'm not all right." This is that's kind of where I am at. Everybody asks, "Are you okay? How are you doing?" I'm fine. It's hard, but I know that I'm going to be able to move past this, and I know that all four of those individuals, I didn't know the pilots, but the two flight crew, like I knew them, and I know that they would say, "We got this. You're good. Keep doing you." And that's not just to me, that's to everybody. So if you guys need to reach out, please feel free to reach out. Carson, we're good
Yeah,
to move on. I'm sorry, man. I just had to put that in.
no, of course. And I did want to say, there's nothing like there's no words that really make that any better, and that's not what I'm trying to do when saying this, but I think there is solace in the fact that nothing speaks higher to, in my opinion, to one's character or one's legacy than making their final act being in the name of helping somebody else, right?
Yes.
And so, and how lucky are we to have people that mean so much to us it tears us up when we lose them.
Yeah,
You know,
this was definitely a huge, huge loss for our community here. Like, I haven't seen the community this broken in a few years, and this is pretty broken.
mhm. Yeah, that's it doesn't make it better. It doesn't, bring them back or anything, but to have such a strong legacy to leave and to have people that mean that much to us, like we're lucky to be in this environment just for that, I think.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And like I said, I this did break the community, but at the same time, like that company has people that are already out flying again, and that speaks so many volumes to the people that are working there, to the people that are help surrounding them. Like we keep each other close, and they're still dedicated to serving the community where like we have a lot of very small populations in our surrounding area, right? In our state, like local to our state and in the surrounding states. And their only options are to fly people out because they don't have the ability to send people out by ambulance. They have maybe one or two ambulances out to cover these huge, huge areas, and they need those flight services. So having that and having the people dedicated to that to continue going is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. Sorry to bring you down, man.
No, you're not bringing me down at all. That's what this is all about, and I enjoy the real and the raw conversations. So please talk about that stuff anytime over small talk.
It's true. And I really appreciate that you're so open to it. Um, so you're all of 29. What would you
All of.
say is all of, yeah, you're a baby still.
I don't know about that. I'm feeling my. I got like a dog years thing going on though, where I feel like I have the body of a 50 or a 60-year-old, not a 29-year-old.
It is too early for that, friend. You still have a long career. Honestly, like flying in the rotor or flying in general is really hard on your body. So you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself because
Yeah.
the like vibrations and then the G's that you feel when you're flying are exceptionally hard, as well as the mixed like dehydration, you know?
Hmm.
It can be really hard. So you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself, especially because you're in the military. But you're almost done, right, with the military?
Yeah, my contract ends in May, and I'm not officially out, and there's always time to re-up. But it's getting harder and harder to balance both the civilian and the National Guard career. And I'm so happy for the National Guard career, but it almost feels like I'm at a point where I have to go with one as opposed to the other. And I understand there's USARA laws, and my employers have been so supportive of both services. But at the same time, it's just I'm getting older now, and I have been nonstop throughout more than just my 20s, just training and doing and training and going and working. And it's been the most fulfilling mission to be able to do all these things, but I got to drop one, I think. And I don't know if I'm going to re up or not.
Does that make you sad?
Oh, it's hard. The hardest feeling, and I tell this to people: you can't stay somewhere because of your best friends, because your best friends will eventually leave as well. But my unit that I'm in right now has the best culture and has some of the best people. A lot of times the military likes to say that we're the greatest 1% of people because we raise our hand to serve, and it's more than that. These are genuinely the greatest people I know that are in this unit with me, and it would be so hard for me to leave and then them catch a deployment within the same year, and it's all the same people that are over there somewhere, and I'm not there, and that's definitely been in the back of my mind. But at the same time, there's going to come a time where there's no one left in that unit. They've all moved on as well. And I have to be the example and leave the legacy where I can. And they all know that they've got my number and they can call me or text me anytime. And I'll hop in my little red pickup truck and be right there for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you put a lot of pressure on yourself to hold together like the team, right? It kind of sounds like that's how it was for you at CVICU, and it kind of sounds like that's how it is at the military for you as well. Do you feel like you have that pressure on you to be a leader where you feel there might not be any other leadership?
I don't know. So one really bad character flaw of mine is I don't take the time to self-reflect like I should. And maybe that's the case, but I really do feel that I try to be the person that people around me need. And if that is a leader, then I'll be that. I don't know if I'll be a good leader. Like I'm not a self-proclaimed one, but I'll be that the best that I can. Or if they need someone that's a rock for the unit while they're all kind of breaking and someone that can, make sure they can go take a breath for 10 minutes and grab some food or something, like I've always wanted to be that person for them. And so what that's materialized to be is maybe putting that sort of pressure on myself, but I'd rather it be on me in those situations than other people. And unfortunately, with the state of healthcare and with the state of recruitment and retention in the military, there's not enough people to go around in general, let alone people that have either the basic qualifications or the mentality in order to take on those roles. And so I'm happy to do it, but there's just not enough of us, I don't think, that can do that.
And I know you said you don't do a lot of self-reflecting, so I'm going to make you do a little bit of self-reflecting.
Fair enough.
Why do you feel the need to do that though? Like what makes you think that you need to take on that role specifically?
It's a good question. I haven't really thought about that quite so much. I think what it comes down to is like how I've talked about the people around me being so important to me that I feel that not just my purpose, but our purpose is to be who we can for each other because there's no getting through any of this stuff alone, especially not in a COVID era ICU or in a rotorcraft where it's just you and your partner and your pilot or in a military unit. It's always going to be something bigger than just one of us. And so we all have to step up and fulfill our roles. And if there's a role that needs fulfilled, or if I can do that to make it better for the other people around me, that's who I want to be.
Sure. No, that's a good reason. I feel like at the same time though that puts a lot of pressure on you that's not necessarily needed. So what do you do for your mental health? How do you de-stress? How do you lock out? Because you also mentioned earlier that you really like the ability with EMS and with nursing to be able to step away and say, okay, I'm not at work today. And I'm going to call you out and I'm going to call you a little bit of a liar because you talk about also in the form that I had you fill out, you also mentioned that you do spend a lot of your time doing work related things. And I also know that you just recently started a podcast that is medicine based. So you are
Yeah,
starting to really surround yourself. So what do you do for you?
that's fair. And I think that a lot of that comes from finding a way to enjoy the process, not just for the process itself. Like originally, when I started going to the gym, it wasn't so that Carson, could be fit. It's so that way, this soldier here, because I need to have a military fitness level and I need to be able to do CPR for prolonged periods of time. But then you start to enjoy the gym process and then you start doing it for you, right? Or studying all the phone med studying that I do and going to these conferences. Yeah, I could just zone in on the military and the medical stuff at these conferences. But really, I just as much I get to meet new friends like you, and I get to meet all these cool people and go to destination cities. And I think that there is a balance while you're still doing this stuff, and it's always still part of what you're doing outside of work, and taking the time to prioritize yourself in the middle of that process. I think there's a healthy balance while you continue to get yourself better. The reality is, I am as single as it gets. I live by myself and I do a lot of things by myself, and I genuinely find so much purpose in what I'm doing here that I want to continue to get better with it every day, even outside of work. And I think a lot of that, becoming a better nurse or a better medic or whatever it is, a lot of that is for me as well because I get personal satisfaction out of it. And sometimes it does border to be pretty unhealthy, and sometimes it does border to be a lot where I need to step away and find a hobby. But as of right now, I know that every patient that I go to and every time that I have an outcome that's less than favorable, that I truly did give 110% to that patient anytime. So there is solace in that.
Yeah, no, and that's an awesome way to think. And I don't want you to think that I'm judging you by any
Not at
means
all.
or that I'm shitting on you by any means, but like, do you think that because you're young, right? Do you think that in 20, 30, 40 years, this is something that you might regret?
Do you mean like the career or the lifestyle?
The lifestyle, right? The career is the
Mm-hmm.
career. We are here because we want to be here, but the lifestyle where you're choosing to also put in so much time in your off time towards this still continued career, and you're not taking the breaks, right? Like, for instance, I told Gwenny not that long ago, it's been a little over a year now, that I went out randomly for my birthday and bought a bunch of fishing stuff, and I'd never gone fishing, and one of the people that listens, her name's Jackie. I see her every so often because she works for a flight company out here. And she was like, Sam, something that you said was kind of like struck a chord with me and I can't stop thinking about it. She was like, have you gone fishing? She's like, I put all that stuff on the side. Have you gone fishing? I said, you know what? I haven't gone fishing. The week after the crash, I said, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna go. And I went fishing for the first time and I had an amazing time fishing. And I just want other people to feel that. And I want people to know like you taking that break for yourself is not going to, it's not going to stop the world of medicine, right? It's going to continue going. And when people say, like, again, I'm not trying to shit on you, I'm not trying to
You're
make you
not
feel bad,
shitting on me. It's okay.
but
I
when
love it.
people say, like, your spot will be filled before you even have your ceremony of death, right? Your whatever kind of thing that you believe in. Like, it's so true. It's so sad and it's
Mhm.
so true. So take those moments.
I think there's a lot to unpack there. And the first thing that I want to unpack is I have it in writing. A good friend of mine has all this in writing. At my funeral, there will be an open bar and a DJ. And that's going to be the
Oh my
vibes that we
God.
bring to it. So first off, that's what's going to happen. But I did have a moment not too long ago because I was gunning and I really wanted this flight nurse thing. I told everyone I was going to do it. I was gunning towards it. I finally got not just the job, but off orientation, released, and got told I'm doing good. Like one of those where it's like, okay, cool, I'm there. All right, what hobbies do I like and what do I want to do? I got to thinking like, man, I got nothing. I don't even know. I don't even know what it is that I like. So I think that I don't like putting. I'm not the kind of guy that puts thoughts into numbers. Like the age of 20 versus the age of 30. But like I've alluded to, I've spent my entire 20s dedicated to this, and it'd be nice to, as I transition into my 30s, really take the time to figure out what it is that I like. And now that I have this great foundation for a great career, not lose a tenacity towards always wanting to do better and do better and be better, but I don't have to go back to school anymore. So there's time for that. I don't have to, constantly study anymore because I'm starting to understand material and now I just have to keep up with the material. And I think I want to use that time to my advantage and really improve and develop more personal relationships because we all know in this career, you miss weddings and you miss funerals, you miss birthdays and all the things. And unfortunately, that has, especially being the only one in a first responder military medical role in my family, it's been hard for them to grasp that as well. And so it'd be nice to kind of take some of that back as time goes forward, and spend more time focusing on those things around me, and maybe even start a family of my own one day.
That's awesome. And I know you'll get there. I know you don't think of numbers now, but as you get older, you do start to think of numbers in that way. Take
Fair
it
enough.
from my experience. Um, so in your time in EMS and in healthcare, you said it's been a little over 10 years. Is that correct?
Thereabout. I started as a lifeguard in 16, as an EMT in 19. I'm 29 now, so about a decade.
Okay. Um, do you have any calls that follow you around like luggage, right? Is there one that maybe ghosts and follows you around everywhere that you go?
There are a few that, you just kind of get reminded of, and I like to think that I cope and handle them in healthier ways. But you go through 10 years of your career, and you're always going to have a few that like stick out. I remember my last week in the hospital, I got called to assist with a code in a different ICU in the same hospital, and it was a simple hip fracture that needed a relocation or something like that. You don't get the full story in the capacity that I was at, but the patient was coding, so I hop on the chest, and the doctor goes, "All right, I'm going to open him up." I'm like, "You're what?" "Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and open him up." So I go down to the ER where our only open thoracotomy tray is, grab that, sprint up, grab it from the ER like a baton, go back up to the ER, hand it to the doctor, and he cuts the patient open and then sticks out the heart and gives it to me. He goes, "All right, start squeezing." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, start squeezing. Like you're on the heart." So I start squeezing that, and every time I squeeze that heart, blood squirts up into my face because like it's all the vasculature around the heart that is the issue here. I don't know how it went from a hip dislocation or hip surgery to that, but we ended up putting 60 some units of blood products into that patient. And I know that as a big level one receiving facility, we were on diversion for lack of blood products after that patient. We obviously didn't get the patient back or anything like that, but it was so grotesque and bloody that the entire bed that patient was on had to be thrown away. There was no cleaning it. Like we were all just slipping on the floor afterwards. And so like those are some of the visuals, some of the things that we see that not everyone is very, you know, used to seeing and whatnot. And I think the other pivot on that in the ICU is you spend time with your patients, weeks, sometimes months. And so you do see both the general incline and the general decline of the progression of their care. So you get the ones every now and then, like, yeah, I was talking to that guy last week and now I'm coding them. But yeah, little visuals like that do stick around.
Yeah, that's got to be hard. And it's easy to forget, right? If you're not in that position or you've never been in that position. Like, as a paramedic in the streets, I literally just get to go and drop them off. And then they're your problem. They're not my problem anymore. And I don't have to think about them anymore. And even in the hospital, like working in the ER, less so now, right? With as many admissions as we're having, we hear it kind of everywhere that a lot of the ER rooms are becoming inpatient rooms, which is true because you're waiting for patients to go upstairs, but that's not even like weeks or months. Usually it's just a few days, maybe even a tour, right? So like your full 3 days. But being in that ICU and seeing those people, like you said, for weeks or months and then having to code them or get to walk them out is probably pretty hard. I can imagine that that's probably pretty hard for people. But I think we are seeing a few more ICU deaths due to suicide than we did previously. And I'm wondering if maybe that isn't something that is connected with that.
Possibly. And I think what people tend to struggle with, and this is more speculation than anything else, is I think in EMS, police, fire, all the healthcare, we all know that you have to compartmentalize. Like sometimes it's just game on, you got to put that off to the side and do your job, right? And in the ICU, we have to do that as well. But we do that for 12 hours at a time with the same patient. And then we see, like we said, that patient, they got better and better, and then all of a sudden decline, and now we're coding them again. And we got to know these people. You have to compartmentalize, and you start doing that for years, and you push all that stuff away as you have a job to do, and then you find that you're not turning that stuff off when you make it back home as well, and you turn into this jaded, just nasty mother trucker kind of person because you're so used to compartmentalizing. That's how you survive emotionally in those circumstances. And I think that affects our home lives and our family lives, and it becomes isolating. And that's why it becomes so hard for us to develop good personal relationships outside of the business. And we all know that everyone in this business, no matter what corner of it we're in, we're all crazy, wild people that sometimes are great for each other and sometimes are toxic for each other. So it's good to have people outside of healthcare and outside of first response. But at the same time, how do you find people you can relate to? It's such a balance that people struggle with, and I think ICU nurses especially struggle with that one.
Yeah, and I can understand that, right? Because we see a lot of somebody told me the other day that being an ICU nurse is almost one of the loneliest areas, which surprised me, right? Because you have this like whole team and but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's you taking care of one, maybe two like super sick people, and it's each individual person doing that. And if you have a code, yeah, you get help, but really it's you yourself taking care of those people. So I had to step back and reflect on that for a moment because it kind of blew my mind that that is such a lonely position to be, but that's also a position that a lot of nurses strive to be in because that's one of the top positions you can be in as a nurse.
Yeah, and I don't know if I like the whole like top versus bottom. Like, there are step down nurses that work super hard and do all the things too. But to kind of like paint the picture to what you're talking about, there was an era, like I said, I wasn't even old enough for scientifically my frontal lobe to have been developed yet. And in that era, I was not promoted above peers by any means, but I was the only one in that age group that was in charge. And so when you're a charge nurse, you have to be careful who you sit next to and how long you talk to people, just because you don't want to give off a favoritism vibe. And so even when you have friends, you got to distance yourself. And then you work night shift and you want to keep yourself on that night shift train, and it's never just 3 on 4 off, right? So you are constantly, you go home at night, even on your nights off, and you're just kind of sitting there alone at 2 a.m. And if you don't have anyone else in this business, there's nobody you can hit up. And then you try to maintain a sleep schedule in order to do that, like, because you can't just turn off all that. It's not even adrenaline, but you're constantly on mission mode, so you can't turn that off. So to do that, I would take a fistful of like Benadryl and melatonin, maybe wash it down with even a shot of whiskey, and then try to sleep. Then you're groggy when it's time to go to your shift. So I do about 3 to 4 scoops of pre-workout every shift throughout the shift just to stay awake. And then about a year and a half into that lifestyle, I spot checked my blood pressure as I was feeling a little extra spicy in the chest that day. And I was in charge. I was in charge of the unit. I was the only one available for codes and rapids, and I had a balloon pump patient and an Impella patient to myself. Like that was just the typical day in that type of environment during peak COVID season. And so feeling a little spicy in the chest. I don't usually get stressed, but this was a rough day. Check my blood pressure, and it was 229 over 145. And I'm like,
Jeez,
whoa.
bro.
Yeah. So obviously there's something to be said for taking care of yourself versus survival mode. And that definitely tipped over to the edge of more of survival mode. And even that wasn't really working. And I remember the ICU doctor at the desk was like, dude, which patient is that? We got to intervene on that. And I said, no, that's just me. Like, you need to go to the ER. I'm like, I can't. This is patient abandonment. Like, I can't just leave a patient on a balloon pump and on an Impella. They'll certainly die if I go into the ER. So we're just going to wing it. And that's kind of when it hit. Like, I'm either going to move on to flight nursing or I'm going to get out and do something different. And I gave myself a 1 year expiration on, I'm only doing this for 1 more year. And luckily, I got the flight nursing job.
That's awesome. And I'm glad that you recognized that you needed to get out. If I was on the streets and I was somebody that just walked up to you and I asked you, can you tell me like one of your funniest moments? What would you share with me?
Yeah, there was a time I was an ICU tech while I was in nursing school. And, you know, pre COVID, if someone codes in the hospital, everybody and their mother comes, right? And it's one of those patient codes, all of the lab is there, all the medical students are there. There are some cute nursing students that are there that I'd, been talking to throughout the day. And I was 19, pumping away on the chest. And, we're doing all the things. I point over to the nursing students like, hey, you guys, you want in on this? Like, no, no, no. I'm like, all right, cool. Don't worry, bro. I got this on the chest, pumping, pumping. And before I know it, my pants are around my ankles because apparently they weren't tied properly. And the nurse, like, you can't get off the chest. They teach you have to keep doing CPR. So immediately, just like beat red, not just from the exhaustion of CPR, but because like this just happened. And the nurse behind me pulls up my pants, ties them, and it says, "Keep going, bud." We got the patient back.
Was it a male nurse or a female nurse?
It was a female nurse behind me.
Oh, that's even worse.
It didn't even matter at that point. Like, just it was also just in an era, when you're 19 years old, you're on the top of that Dunning Kruger, mountain of whatever, where you don't know what you don't know, and you're just stupid and ignorant, and that put me right in the valley of despair the moment that happened.
The valley of despair. So, were you wearing boxer briefs or whitey tighties?
I didn't even look down, but I just know they stayed on. Yeah, I want to say it was like boxer briefs is what I usually go for, but I was focused on the patient for a way to get him back.
Oh, well, that's good.
Oh, there was actually a story I was thinking about. It was we had a patient that their family member they called a rapid on the patient. They weren't breathing very well. The family just jumps out of the room, right? So we go in to see what's up with the patient. And of course, he's not breathing very well. We do the whole thing. It's pretty easy to get him back. And they decide to move him to the ICU just for some monitoring. And the same thing happens in the ICU a couple of days later. And they go to intubate the patient, intubate him and everything else. And one of those were like peri-arrest, really scary, but like, what the heck is causing this? This makes no sense. Until my house supervisor picks up a little baggie in the side of the room and goes, like, what's this bag of dirt? I said, Nicole, that's heroin. So it turns out the family was drawing up heroin and pushing it down his IV sites and just to give him his heroin.
What dedication that family has, right? First of all, the dedication from the family. Second, I I saw the biggest rock the other day of meth that I've ever seen in my whole life. Like, it legit was like it was a big, probably, if I had to guess, like 2 by 2 inch rock.
Damn.
It was so big, dude. Never seen it that big. I know, right? He wasn't doing so hot. So
Yeah.
No, that's I don't know why family does that. Was the patient in a position to be asking for it, or were they just doing it?
Both times I got called up, and both times I saw the patient kind of like, so I couldn't really tell you, but yeah, we actually had a drug ring that was taking place in an old waiting room of one of our overflow ICUs. Like you'd be surprised how much security guard stuff you're gonna start doing as a charge nurse.
All right, Carson. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about anything that we didn't talk about, anything that you want to bring up or mention before we disconnect today.
First off, it's been so great, having this conversation with you. You're such an awesome person, and your platform is incredible. So thank you for what you do. It's really been great listening to the people you have on and yourself humanize all of this for us, and there's not enough of that. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I am active on Instagram and TikTok for anyone that wants to just keep up with my little story, what I'm doing. I'm not like an influencer or this crazy content creator, but I do put stuff out just for fun. I think I'm at Root Carson or at Root Carson on Instagram, and Carson.root at TikTok. Probably if you search me, you might find me. I don't know. But okay. I also have a little podcast and do it with my friends, just a little we study, but we put our study groups out on the internet, and every now and then we talk about things similar to this as well. It's Critical Care Crossroads. I started that with my friends Nicole and Jaden, and so those are just kind of what I'm up to.
That's awesome. And where can we find your podcast?
It's available right now on Spotify and Apple. I'm trying to get it on YouTube. The truth is, I'm not very technologically inclined, so we might get it on YouTube at some point, or maybe I'll just do it. It's a hobby thing. It's not a professional thing, so doing my best with it.
Well, you're doing good. It looks like you're getting quite a few views, which is good. And I'm listening to it myself. I think you're having some really awesome conversations, and it feels very like you're just sitting in a group and hanging out with people, which is really neat. It's a really awesome vibe to have, and it's hard to get. So you're doing a good job.
Thank you. We just try to capture the feeling of, how like when you're in school and your friends, you got together to study, and it's just kind of a warm study group over, coffee or food or whatever. That's just the vibe we're trying to capture. So we don't go super deep into anything. I don't even know if we even get the answers right sometimes. Everyone is more than welcome to come along with us for the conversation.
Well, awesome. I just want to throw out that it has been a phenomenal conversation. And I think now that I have my shit together, I would just want to say to the flight crew that recently lost their lives, Jeff, Amanda, Cami, and Nick, we have it from here. Rest easy. We love you guys. I love you guys. Carson, I love you. I don't even know you. And I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day.
All the same to you. And thank you to that crew as well.
Yes. And thanks for joining me on the 911 Nonsense podcast. Take care, Carson. Bye.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show and want to show your support, be sure to check out the Noon merch store on Bonfire. Find the link in the description below. Also, if you have any guest suggestions or if you're interested in being a guest on Noon yourself, visit the website at www.samspursuit.com to get in touch.